call the meeting to order. Dr. Deegan, the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Would you like to give the oath of office?
Okay, Ms. Edwards, please raise your right hand.
I, Kelly Edwards, hereby declare under oath that I will faithfully perform the duties of Board Member Office Number 3. Lawton Independent School District Number 8. Comanche County, Oklahoma. To the best of my ability. And that I will faithfully discharge all of the duties pertaining to said office and obey the Constitution and laws of the United States and Oklahoma. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now y'all are free to go.
All right, all soccer practice. Thank you all.
Need someone to make a motion.
Okay, make a motion that we nominate Kent Jester as president of our school board.
You need a second. Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Call the roll.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
I guess so.
Let's see, where do I put that? Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
There you go. You ready for the next one?
Hey,
Yes.
hang on.
Entertaining nomination for vice president?
Well, she says, hang on.
Hang on. Okay.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Carla Clodfelter for Vice President of the Board of Education.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
That's not
Okay,
good.
call the roll, please, for the meeting.
I went the wrong place, sorry. Ms. Clodfelter?
Here.
Ms. Nyworth?
Here.
Dr. Bridges?
Here.
Mr. Jester?
Here.
Ms. Edwards?
Here.
Colonel Curtis?
Here. Do we have any special guests tonight, Mr. Deegan? No special guests.
Guess they left us. Yeah, they've already gone.
Departmental reports?
The only item we have in our departmental reports tonight are the written updates from the departments, and so if, unless the board has any questions about those, there are no more departmental reports.
Okay. Report of the superintendent?
Yes, under the report of the superintendent, under item A, I would like to invite our financial advisors to the podium. But it's consider and take action with respect to the resolution approving lease purchase agreement pertaining to the acquisition and financing of a new Eisenhower Middle School and storm shelter / safe rooms at district sites, approving escrow and paying agent agreement, approving the forms of lease purchase agreement, ground lease agreement, tax regulatory agreement, continuing disclosure agreement, and official statement, approving other documents and certificates related thereto, and containing other provisions related thereto. Off to you, sir.
Good evening. Nate Ellis, Public Finance Law Group, is your bond counsel, and Joe Ciano and Chris Gander from Bank of Oklahoma as your financial advisors are also here. This is the first approval step relative to the lease purchase to do the Eisenhower Middle School project and then the safe rooms that are going to be incorporated in that. The BOK is still working through some of the structuring issues, basically to determine what ultimately is going to be the lowest cost of funds. What will happen is Comanche County Educational Facilities Authority will be a conduit issuer. They will issue a debt obligation, whether that's a bond or a note is to be determined. But then they will turn around and they will provide the proceeds of that to you under a lease purchase arrangement. You'll go through on an annual basis and you'll be acquiring pieces of it as we go through time over the course of about the next 10 years. And ultimately then at the end, the school will own, or the district will own all of the facilities that were constructed out outright. So fairly standard structure as far as that goes. This resolution that you have in front of you authorizes the various documents that the district will be a party to. There'll be a bunch of other documents that are actually the authority as the actual issuer of debt will have as well. And at this point, we're still on track with our schedule. We would anticipate being in front of the county and the authority for their formal approvals here in the next couple of weeks, and with a plan to have it closed and money in place before the end of March. Yes?
I know we're doing for 10 years and stuff, but say we implement another bond in 6 years or something, and can we pay off early? Or how does that work? Or does it have to be structured where it goes out into 10 years?
That's one of the, that's one of the things that remains to be determined, and we'll be, BOK will be working closely with staff here at the district to get what the most advantageous terms are. Anytime you have a debt issuance, to the extent that you have the ability to call the note or the bonds earlier, that tends to push the interest rate higher. So obviously the higher the rate, the more funds that are ultimately expended in retiring that. The longer you can wait without having a prepayment, potentially the lower the rate might be. So that's one of those balancing things, at looking at what the market actually best provides, what's the best opportunity for that. And as far as what is anticipated, though, is that there will be a portion of the general obligation bonds that you issue on an annual basis that will be dedicated to take out pieces of the lease purchase over a period of time. So I don't know that we will do any other lease purchases out of this current authorization. What might be more likely is if there is a subsequent bond election authorization before we're through this full cycle. You might have another lease purchase involved in that's before we get to the end of this deal, but those are kind of independent things in a lot of ways. So, Chris, anything you want to add on that? Or
we make that decision, or do y'all make that decision? How does that work? Is it a joint?
Yeah, ultimately, I'm going to get into Chris's area, so it's a financial advisor questions.
And generally with the lease, because you are paying it through the GO bond issues, we've projected out the growth of the city based on historic growth rates. So you're generally, it's not like a sales tax where you might have some lump amount of money come in. So generally speaking, you're not going to have that prepayment ability isn't really that important. Because it's hard, you can't really take advantage of it, so to speak, because you're having to manage the tax rates that you've promised to maintain for the taxpayers. Now, I think, and I may be wrong, but I feel like you're getting to, if there are other projects that need to be done, one, some of that's built in on top of this, some of the other projects. And then secondly, if there was a need that arose and you had another election, just because this is outstanding doesn't preclude you from coming out and doing another election and having completely different propositions and having that layered on top of this. So if you had growth that was in excess of what we projected, you might be able to do an additional election, keep tax rates where you promised, and even be able to go above and beyond what you were hoping to do because of that excess growth. And I think that's what you're getting at, is really that your hands aren't tied, you're not handcuffed, and we don't believe this would do
That's exactly right. I just didn't want to, I want to make sure when we did it that we just, there wasn't going to be any way we could make any provisions later on down the road.
Yeah, you'd still be able to have, and you could do whatever you wanted to as a separate election, and we tried to dovetail it on top of this. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call roll. Call roll, please.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes. You gonna call Kent?
Mr. Jester?
You skipped Kent.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just because I wanted to save you for last, and I forgot you, Mr. Jester.
Yes.
Well, look at it. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you very much. Superintendent announcements?
I would have two quick announcements. I don't know if everybody realizes, but we had a group of Lawton High students in Washington last week.
Close up.
They made the Washington Post. Kind of cool. They had a discussion with Senator Inhofe and then Representative Cole. And I believe it's on our Facebook page. If you want to look at it, it's pretty interesting, but I'm proud of our students, and they were on it. It's just cool. Washington Post and Lawton High students get in there. A little political exchange. It's kind of fun. And then I want to also, we have a chance for a repeat for MacArthur High School, who just got wrestling dual state. And then next week or two, they go back for wrestling. And so everybody remembers last year they got both wrestling state titles in the same year. This year they have a real shot to do that again, which will be, we haven't figured out what that is, a quad-peat? We don't know what to call it.
To think of a term.
But I don't think we could, I don't want to feel bad because I just want to make mention of Dr. Bridges' presidency, that I don't think we've ever, I don't think I've known a president to have to deal with so much in 1 year. A bond election that broke, every other district mold, to have successfully brought the board in this district to that point and through that successfully, and now to have implemented so much so quickly as we did. So I just want to just pay my respect, Dr. Bridges, and I think you've done an amazing job this last year as board president.
Thank you.
And I don't think anybody would have traded you places.
We told her that a lot. We appreciate it.
So much so we almost didn't.
Almost made you again, so. Anyways, that's all the announcements I have.
Well, I agree. I think Dr. Bridges did a stellar job. Appreciate it. I really do. The consent agenda, does anyone need to pull anything?
Nope.
Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Gladfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes. I believe we need to have an executive session tonight.
Yes, and under special business, or under new business, let me get to there. Sorry, I was looking up the exact language. Did we do item 12 yet?
No.
Okay. I'm doing the executive session under new business.
Oh,
Okay, we didn't
you are.
realize that.
after this.
Yes.
Okay.
So the superintendent's personnel report would be next.
Okay. All right.
So item 14, unless the board wishes to go into executive session over the personnel report.
No.
Okay. Item 14 is the approval of certified and support personnel reports under my.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Gladfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Okay, and now,
Item 15 under new
all
business.
right, I move for an executive session. Second.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Gladfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
And with the board's permission, I'd like to invite Colonel Curtis and Chief Hornbeck back with us. And we might have room for you, Chuck. It's going to be crowded.
Call roll, please.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes. There we go. Statement of executive session minute for February 15th. The Board of Education went into executive session at 5:17 p.m. Members present included Kent Jester, President, Carla Clodfelter, Vice President, Patty Nyworth, Kelly Edwards, and Dr. Lori Bridges. Others present included Tom Deegan, Superintendent, Chuck White, LPS School Attorney, David Hornbeck, LPS Chief of Police, and Colonel Curtis, the ex officio member. We discussed the following: the investigation of the plan or scheme to commit an act of terrorism, assessments of the vulnerability of government facilities, or public improvements to an act of terrorism. During the executive session, the board discussed these items and no other items, and no action was taken. The board returned to open session at 5:47. This constitutes the minutes of the executive session.
And Mr. Jester, with your permission, I'd like to make a little statement about our following executive session.
Please do.
Because I'm sure press would like to know what we did. Louder. Yes, ma'am, Kathy, yes. Well, we, as everybody knows, there was a terrible event yesterday that happened in Florida. It's just every school person's nightmare, every parent's nightmare, every child's nightmare. When we discuss these issues as a school district, we cannot discuss them openly because that would give the bad guys an opportunity to know what our plans or what our thoughts or what our contingencies are. The one thing I can say, we already have an armed police force, a licensed police force with a legal jurisdiction. Chief Hornbeck and our 14 officers that are in our secondary schools and also assist our elementary schools are licensed police officers. We have a police department. We're one of the few school districts in the entire state that has its own police department. One thing that we're going to start immediately, beginning immediately with Chief Hornbeck's, under his direction, his guidance, we already have armed police officers in our secondary schools, middle schools and high schools every day. Beginning immediately, we're implementing plans, and we're implementing, well, beginning immediately, we'll have armed police officers in our elementaries every day. That's probably as much as I can say at the moment. Beginning immediately, we will have armed police officers in our elementary schools as well. And we'll assess as we go on. I know Chief's working on other things, but I want to thank our teachers and our staff. I want to thank our police officers. I want to thank our board for the efforts they do on a daily basis to keep our children safe. And I want to remind everybody to keep Parkland, Florida in their prayers. So.
I would like to say on that and say, no, I'd like to thank Dr. Deegan for coming up with this so quickly and so we could get this implemented and get rolling as quick as we are.
Chief Hornbeck, he's the man.
I think you guys were already working on it prior to this event too and just being proactive with it. So I think escalating it was the right choice and you guys are wonderful.
That's all I had for new business.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Not yet.
Oh, dang it. I was so good
You're
at
just trying to, hold on.
Next regular board meeting date is March 12th, 2018 at Shoemaker Center. Are there any need for any further or different dates?
No.
Board announcements? All right, Carla.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Call roll, please.
Carla's our new
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.